Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are looking towards the future and going over our way too early top 10 teams for the 2025 college football season. As always, if you enjoy, be sure to like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's look at our honorable mentions for this list. We have three teams here: South Carolina, Arizona State, and Iowa State. All three of these teams had great seasons in 2024, and they all return a bunch of talent, but we're not confident enough to say yet that these teams will crack the top 10 next year. They all lose some of their top pieces from this past season, and they're all led by good quarterbacks who we think can have great seasons in 2025, but personally, I feel like it's a wait and see type of year for those guys and those teams overall. So they are all just outside of our top 10, and at 10, we have the Michigan Wolverines starting off with a bang. We think Michigan is one of the most underrated teams going into 2025. They do lose important pieces like Mason Graham, Will Johnson, Colston Loveland, but they've added a ton of talent in the portal, and they're a program who already has elite talent waiting in the wings. And most importantly, they bring in two quarterbacks to cushion that room: Fresno State starter Mikey Keene and the #1 overall prospect from 2025 in Bryce Underwood. Either of those guys would be a major step up for that Michigan offense, and they were really only one good quarterback away from a similar finish to their 2023 season this year. Again, a massively underrated team going into next year. We don't see a lot of publications putting them above 15. We think they're in our top 10, and we think another team that's being looked down upon is the Alabama Crimson Tide, who we have at 9. They're coming off their worst season since 2007, but we have to keep in mind it was year one under a new system. They didn't have everything worked out as quickly as you'd like to see if you're a Crimson Tide fan, and we know that Kalen DeBoer is big on year twos. Alabama does lose Jalen Milroe, and they did get hit hard with depth transferring out, but it'll most likely even out, and Alabama under Kalen DeBoer has been big on focusing on impact players out of the portal, which they have gotten plenty of this year, as well as an already stacked group of wideouts and running backs. They've still got all the talent in the world, and if Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, incoming freshman Keelan Russell, or whoever they bring in to fill that quarterback one role is at least a decent passer, decent decision maker, they should be in for a solid 2025 season. Not unlike your next team, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at 8. We still don't have the full picture on what Notre Dame will look like in 2025. We don't for most of these teams, but especially not for Notre Dame. Their season just ended, and we're waiting to see who's departing and who's staying. But if they keep Mike Denbrock at offense coordinator and find a solid replacement for Al Golden at defensive coordinator, they should be just fine in our opinion. They have some great guys returning in Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Faison, and Greathouse, but the bulk of their losses do come on defense. They lose a ton of key players on that side of the ball, as well as quarterback Riley Leonard, but with the crop of talent they're bringing in both from high school and the portal, and with Marcus Freeman being their head coach, we think they'll firmly cement themselves in the top 10 once again in 2025. Maybe not top 4, maybe not in the national title game, but they'll at least be making their case again. They bring in CJ Carr, who is an excellent quarterback prospect out of high school, but we'd like to see them add an experienced starter before we decide to thrust them up or down our list. And at 7, we have the Clemson Tigers. What an interesting offseason already for the Tigers. Out goes Wes Goodwin, in comes Tom Allen, and a few transfers. You heard me correctly. Dabo is using the portal, and we have to say he's using it well. He brings in an instant impact player in Purdue's Will Helt, as well as what will probably be instant rotational guys in Tristan Smith and Jeremiah Alexander. And this is huge news for Clemson, a team who already has a massive pool of high school talent, but who has been bleeding a good chunk of that talent in the transfer portal in recent years with nothing to show in return. That was our biggest critique of Dabo coming into this season and in past years, and this is exactly what we wanted to see from him. He's not going to build a roster through the portal, obviously, but he's gotten a few guys who can help right away to fit an already stacked roster with guys like Cade Klubnik, Antonio Williams, Bryant Wesco, Brown, Brown, Woodaz, Parker, and Woods all returning for 2025 should be a big year for the Tigers. Could even see them moving up closer to the top 5 by the start of the 2025 season if they keep their offseason momentum going. But next at number 6, we have the LSU Tigers. Probably an unpopular pick here, and we know Brian Kelly hasn't been the most consistent coach at LSU, or one of the most consistent coaches depending on how you look at it, but he hasn't been a top 15 head coach at LSU so far. There's plenty to say about that, but we're taking the bait once again this year. They retain Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback, who has the potential to be a Heisman caliber quarterback if he can tone down the turnovers. And while they do lose a good chunk of talent, especially on the offensive line, they brought in a horde of guys to fill those roles, a couple interior offensive linemen. The wide receiver from Kentucky, Barrion Brown, stands out as a guy who could easily be Nussmeier's #1 target in 2025. Same with Oklahoma's Nick Anderson. You've got guys like Jamari Butler, Sadir Mitchell, and Patrick Payton as additions for that defensive front. And this feels like an all-in play from Kelly to get talent in now to make a push next year. We'll have to wait and see if Kelly gets in his own way again, but they are more than talented enough to justify their spot here in our opinion. And after them, we have Penn State at number 5. We are very cautiously putting Penn State in our top 5. We would rank them a bit lower, but we aren't super confident in the teams below them. Drew Allard does return, but we weren't super impressed by his performances late in the season. On top of that, he loses his #1 target from the past season in Tyler Warren, and that defense loses its coordinator as well as its superstar edge rusher Abdul Carter. Some huge departures for Penn State, but they're still very talented. The offense will bring back both of its 1,000-yard rushers in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, which is the primary usage on that offense. And Penn State has been known to produce talent on defense, so as long as they don't make an absolute blunder hire for their defensive coordinator job, they should be very good once again in 2025. And at 4, we have none other than the Georgia Bulldogs. We approach this team also with a lot of caution. There's still a lot to work out in terms of that roster, but they have brought in a few star players in the portal already, and we know that Georgia is going to be able to load back up immediately on defense. The biggest question, in our opinion, is who will the Bulldogs quarterback be next season? Will it be Gunnar Stockton? Will it be Ryan Puglisi? Will it be the true freshman Ryan Montgomery? Probably not, but we think it'll be one of the other two guys. But Stockton, in his performances this year, did not look amazing. Averaged under 7 yards per completion in his snaps this season. Not at all ideal. You might see a battle between him and Puglisi this offseason. Will be a very interesting development to watch there. And we're sure Kirby will make whatever moves necessary to get the guy he think will win in the starting lineup. We trust that defense to be a top unit once again, and that's why we have them where we do. And after them at 3, we have the Oregon Ducks, another team with big departures this year, but who will be immediately loading back up in the portal. They have Dante Moore as their projected starter to take over for Dylan Gabriel. We think he will be an absolute animal for Oregon after sitting behind Gabriel this year. We think they have a crop of young talent ready for their shot, and we think they brought in one of the best portal classes of the offseason so far. They've got 6 guys coming in who will probably start immediately and be game-changing players for the Ducks, as well as a few other rotation and depth pieces. One specifically we want to highlight is Mekhi Hughes from Tulane. He absolutely could be the best back in the country next year, given enough volume. We absolutely love the moves Lanning has made this offseason, and despite losing a good chunk of players, we think Oregon will remain in the national title picture, followed by the reigning national champions. At number 2, it's the Ohio State Buckeyes. Like the last couple teams on this list, the Buckeyes are, simply put, just built to last. They lose a ton of key talent and starters from this past season, like Cody Simon, JTT, Henderson, Ransom, Sawyer, Egbuka, Burke, but they are absolutely locked and loaded. They'll bring in another top high school class this season and will most likely hit the spring portal window hard for more depth and talent in those areas that are more lacking. But most importantly to us, they retain their two superstar players on both sides of the football, Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, two guys who you can absolutely build a championship caliber team around. And with Will Howard leaving, in steps Julian Sayin, who looks like one of the best young quarterbacks in the country, should be able to make another great season out of that group of talent. But last in our list, and at number 1, we have the Texas Longhorns. They're a team who is also losing a ton of talent this year, including Quinn Ewers, Matthew Golden, Andrew Makuba, Jahdae Barron, and Gunnar Helm. But Texas is going to have serious weapons next season. Ryan Wingo, Aaron Butler, DeAndre Moore, Ryan Niblett, Talik Lockett, and Michael Terry are all names of guys who are waiting to break out in that wide receiver room. All high 4-star to 5-star guys, as well as returning backs Trey Wisner, and we assume the pending return of CJ Baxter for Texas, who looked like the Longhorns' lead back coming into the 2024 season, but missed the season due to injury. And the defense is absolutely loaded once again with Anthony Hill Jr., one of the top linebackers in the country, returning, Colin Simmons, a very young borderline elite pass rusher, Michael Taffy, and a few other returning guys, as well as the addition of Brad Spence from Arkansas to bolster that unit. But the biggest factor for us will be the young sensation Arch Manning, who may just be our too early Heisman frontrunner for 2025. He looked amazing in his limited snaps this year. A lot of people, myself included, thought he'd have to take over the job permanently after Quinn Ewers got injured this past season. That's how good he looked, and that's why we're projecting Texas to be our number 1 team of 2025. We know it's early, but that's the whole point. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and if you enjoyed it, feel free to share it to some of your friends, your neighbor, your aunt, your uncle, whoever it may be. It helps us out a lot, and we will see you in the next one.